Hello guys, let's talk about allocation in Sage 200 Evolution. How do we allocate in this application? And what does the word allocation, what does it stand for? You are looking at a way of matching two documents together. That is debit transactions against the credit transactions. Yes. So that at the end of the day, you have a nil balance or you have an outstanding balance. So this process is actually called allocation. You can decide that you want to be able to match your invoice against your receipt, or you want to be able to match your credit notes against what's called a debit note. So this kind of activity can only be done on the Sage evolution as allocation. There are different ways of allocating within the application. And note that this particular allocation process does not affect the customer balances or does not affect the customer statement. At the end of your allocation, you are able to get a true picture of your age analysis. So, age analysis is like you grouping your balance, the balances on your invoice against periods, against a certain range of days. For instance, you could group those that are owing you based on age 30, age 60, 90, like that. So it helps you to actually follow up with customers or debtors that are actually owing you so that you'll be able to focus on the oldest debtors. Yes, so that's what that means. Now, let's go into the Sage 200 evolution to see how this process actually works. First, let's check this if we have transaction in some of these on this application. Let's look at our customer statement. Let's look at a customer statement. I'll be using cash customer, for example. I use cash customers as a name. So let me print a report relating to that. Customer statement. So So I'll just pick a customer, and this particular customer I'm using for our test scenario, I call this cash customer. So let's use just backdate this a little so I have enough transactions to pull out from. So I'm streamlining it to just a single customer in this regard. So it means we have a customer statement here, which shows the invoice that were raised and the payment or the receipt that was raised against this particular customer. Now, the outstanding on this particular customer is this. So now, look at this. If you're supposed to chase this customer on his outstanding, it is ideal for you to chase an oldest balance or an oldest invoice. You may not want to chase invoices that are new. So you might want to look at oldest invoices. So invoices that are actually due and invoices that you know they have overstayed or that needs to be collected immediately. So let's look at this. Let's try to check age analysis report also. to have a better understanding of what we are looking at. Let me go to this, also age analysis report. The same thing too applies to when it comes to your suppliers or your vendors. But in this case, we are trying to use a customer as a case study. So let's look at using this customer as an example. So what does this imply? It means that there are some invoices that are due and not yet allocated. Definitely within the system, that is 150 days. Some are under 120 days, and there are 90 days credit balance also. So this means there are some receipts that are actually raised within these days. That is the age of the document or the balance within the system. Now, how do we relate that this particular balance, this particular receipt that was raised under the system, under the 90 days, should be applied to any of these balances here? We need to apply that so that it can actually give us a true picture of what our age analysis should stand to look like. Now, our balance is this. So, balance, the age analysis balance and the customer statement still remains the same, but we still have balances here, which gives a lot of confusion, which needs to be let me use the word erased so that we can have a better understanding of which invoice is actually outstanding. But in this case, we can see there's a credit balance here, which means there is an overpayment or there's a payment in advance by the customer. You understand? So we may not have that situation, but there are situations whereby the balance here is going to be a debit balance, which actually shows that there are still some invoice that the total payment made cannot still cover up. So in that situation, you want to be able to know which day or what age group does this particular balance falls under. So we are not going to be talking about age analysis as of now, but what we want to focus on is allocation of documents, allocating the debit transactions against the credit transactions. So I'll close this. I'll close this. Now, you can allocate within the Sage 200 year, within the Sage 200 evolution on your cash book batch, on the standard batch, and also on allocation utilities. You can do that. But I would take, let me take the first aspect of, let's say, the cash book batch. Still under our transactions, sorry. Still under our transactions on the GL. Now cash book batches. So I'll pick this for instance. I'll pick one of the cash book batches here, for instance. So this particular cash book batch meets, I need to make payment on, just let's say there's an advance or there was a deposit by that particular customer. So I'll just pick one of these for instance. Please note that I'm trying to make a deposit here. So definitely there will be a change in the balance we saw earlier. So what I will do is let's try to I'll pick the same customer and use something like this. Okay, so and just say deposit made or something. Yeah. So let's look at how much was made. Let's say there was 100,000. Let's use 100,000. So we have a round figure. Okay. So that's that. So I can validate this and also post. Please note something. By the time I click on post, okay, this batch will be modified. Yes. Do I want to save? Definitely, I need to save some changes to it. Do I want to print the batch? Let's assume no. Are you sure you want your? Yeah, I want to post this. Okay, this is posted successfully. So now this comes up. Do you want to allocate customers transactions now? I click on yes. For instance, I'm making this payment and I know an outstanding invoice that I need to allocate it to. So I can click on yes. So it takes me to this screen. This screen, you can allocate manually on this particular screen. But I'm not going to be talking about the screen yet. But this is one way at which you can actually allocate your document on your customer. So let's look at this. So I'm not going to I'm not going to see anything about this because the same screen we are going to be seeing somewhere else, and I'm still going to talk about that. So I'm going to close this. So it means that I'm not allocating at this point. You understand? So let's close this. So that is closed. The 100,000 has been posted into the customer statement. So if we check the customer statement, if we check the age analysis as of now, it would have increased by 100,000. Let's leave that. Now, the other aspect whereby you can also allocate is if you go to your customers transactions, then under standard, that if you're not using that, at least one required transaction. Let's see. Okay, very good. So picking the customer, let me just pick the same customer again. So I don't have transactions, I don't have transaction code defined. That's what the error is saying. Now look at this. Look at this. So the same thing too here. I can actually raise a document here, then click the word allocate. So this also takes me back to that screen. You can see. So you can also allocate here on the standard. But still, I'm not going to talk about this also here again. Just telling you different aspects whereby allocation may come up. But we don't need that here. I'll close this. Next is there's a function within the system that is actually called allocation utility. Allocation utility. So still under my maintenance, under my maintenance, I would see allocation utilities. Now you click allocation utility, you can see that this screen is actually different from the other one. Now, this looks more like an automated way of allocating, which means that I can decide that the system, let's look at something. I'm streamlining to just a customer. which is just the cash customer that we created earlier. Now, look at this. Then I click on process. There are no records to allocate. Why? Um, do I have this document allocated? I will check again, but okay. Let's watch what is happening here. Um, this is supposed to drop all the transactions that had happened within the system. Then you can decide to unallocate when it comes up, or you reallocate. So you can reallocate, and the system can allocate per reference depending on reference that is being imputed in your document. So you can allocate by per reference two, which is this column and this column. So it looks at similar columns, similar reference number between the debit side and also the credit side, then allocate. But if this is not picked, what it also does is it looks at the amount, it looks at the value on the debit side against the credit side. Then it also consider the dates, which is the oldest document against each other. So let's assume an invoice was raised last year, December 31st. An invoice was raised at that time. Then you have a receipt that was generated in, let's say, February or March. You have two receipts generated in February and March. So what the system will do is that it's going to allocate the one for March, February against that invoice that was done in what? December last year. So it looks at the oldest document and also at times look at the value. So automatically it's going to do that. So which means at this point you don't have it's not flexible. You don't have that flexibility to allocate yourself. So you can only allocate based on the reference that is being defined, or the system taking the holder's date to do its allocation itself. So that is the aspect of this. So we close this. I still need to go back to why that particular transaction. Okay, let's do this. Let me go back to that statement. So under my reports, I scroll down to sales statement. Okay, so let's zoom. Just picking a date here. So I'll pick this same customer. So preview. So you can see, so there's an increase of 100,000, which is this, as I earlier said. So I'll close this also. Still go back to my reports. Still don't know why that's still not showing. Another word. Let's just move on with this. Age analysis report. I'll pick this same customer. The same customer. Then let's say preview. So, well, I don't know what's happened there, but it shows that this particular customer is still available. Look at this now. You can see. So there's an increase of 100,000 on it. So I'll close this. I'll close this also. Right. Now let's move on, please. What else? Okay. Let's see why. Still wondering why that's. Let me just check something quickly. I'll check something quickly. So, so allocation utilities again. Oh, okay. Um, maybe. Okay, I think this is my issue. I think yeah. So that was actually my issue. This particular customer was ticked as cash customer, so I needed to include it there. So this was what I was explaining to you the other time. So I had to come back here to the customer's allocation. Now you can see, so at this point, if I can decide to allocate um, everything by clicking on next. So if I click on next, it follows this pattern. It follows this document that is here. Then look at unallocate. So let's say the document is unallocated already. So what it will do now is to allocate it. Let's try something. I click on next. So look at what the system has done. It has been able to allocate. Um, this is an old invoice against this um, receipt that was made by the customer. So at the end of the day, you can see the outstanding balance still comes back here. So you still have the same outstanding balance on that level. So it picks this. Now let's try to unallocate them. I just click on process again, then next. Yeah. So because this is ticked, so it will definitely unallocated. It is ticked. So look at this now. It has unallocated. Let's say um, if I click this, I'm not expecting it to. Let's look at this per reference. I want to untick this per reference. Then I say next. So because we don't have the same, so it's not going to. It's only going to do the normal allocation that it's going to do. So that's why you have this here. Um, this is more of like automatically allocating. You are giving the system the power to allocate based on the criteria I said earlier. So the criteria are is either you're doing per reference or oldest documents against each other. So the two documents, their age, would have to consider that date, then also allocate. So if you look at this date now, this is December 2022. This is so you can see this. This document is allocated to this, which is the receipt allocated to this. This is another document, which is first. This is second invoice that is happening. This is second invoice, and this second invoice is I think January. So this is happening in January 11th. Now look at the cash customers. Look at the receipt that was done. So that is also allocated to rate. So it checks the whole date. Then let me close this. Oh, sorry. We need to unallocate that. Okay, we can leave it then. When we get to the third aspect, then we'll look at it. So now at this point, now I want us to now go back to the last aspect of it. So the last aspect of allocation, or the last part, the last point where we can also allocate, is now when we come to still under your customers. So we go to the customers list. So I can go to the customers list. So I have to click on the customer, then click on allocations. I click on allocations. Now, so this is the same screen we saw earlier. We saw it at two different screens. We saw the same screen at two different parts. We saw it under standard. We saw it under cash book batch. So you have it here again. Look at, because we did this on the allocation utility. That is why it's showing this. So if I want to allocate this, that is matching these two documents. I told you that allocation is more like matching document together. So let's say I want to unallocate all of them. I just say unallocate, or are you sure you want to allocate for yes, I want to unallocate. So now unallocating it, what it has done is that it has been able to bring the two documents, the two types of transactions side by side, which is the debit side and the credit side. So the invoice at this point is on the debit balance, while the credit side is the receipt by the customer, or the payment made by the customer. So now look at this screen also. Based on the dates that these transactions were captured, the system will also automatically group these balances by their age. So you can see 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. So there's an interval of 30 days in between them. Now you can group your age periods, you can group them within the system. This is what was defined within the system. So that is why you can have this, but you can actually create yours and have that and make use of that in all your documents. So let's look at this now. Look at this 90,000 naira, which means 900,000 naira, which means that there was a credit balance on the customer, which is more like a receipt that was raised on this particular customer that happened between now and 90 days. So those documents are actually within the range of 90 days. So if you calculate between now and when those documents are, they all fall within 90 days. So I'm sure you see some in maybe February or April or something like that. So you see all those things like that. That's why you have all this highlighted. Then this is the balance. Why it tells you it's a credit balance. Look at this also. It tells you it's a debit balance. So depending on what document was actually raised. Now, this is unallocated credit. This shows that out of this, or out of these and these are not allocated. So you might also want to look at that unallocated. Now, this this is the transaction code, which is the invoice, the date it was raised, the age it falls under. That is, each of these documents falls under. Then there are two types of there are two ways whereby the system age these documents. One is it looks at, if you tell the system to consider the invoice date, you can tell the system to actually consider the invoice date, or you tell the system that the date at which the first statement or remittance was printed, that is when it should start, what's it called? Computing the date, the age of that particular document. So Sage has those two, but the best and the by standard, the invoice date should be what it should be. So that's why you have the invoice date. So the invoice date till date, all these documents till date falls under 150 days, 120 days, like this. Now these are filters. These are filters. Still based on this, this is debit balance, which is what you are having here. So depending on what you want to see, so these are filter. Why this is, I think the only one that is not here is full credit. Yeah, fully allocated credit. And you have another one here, fully allocated debit. So this is for the debit side, which is the invoices or debit note that are being raised. This is what you are going to be seeing here. Why this side is actually for the credit. So if you click on each of these filter also, it brings whatever that is there here, or this, vice versa. So like, for instance, let me create it. You can see it's going to drop just the same thing here. It's going to drop it here. So the same thing also. Now, how do you then allocate? So if you tell the system to allocate all also, what the system will do is that it will automatically do it for you. So in this situation now, it will be looking at the holder's document. So let's say allocate all. Look at, so just the same way we did with allocation utility. So it's going to show all that for us. But if I don't want to allocate all, I say unallocate all. So it takes it back. Now I want to allocate manually. So if you want to allocate manually, all you just need to do is you need to pick, you need to tick the document on this side. So which document do you want to allocate on? So for instance, I want to allocate this invoice 3 to this particular payment that was made. What's the balance here? The balance here is 48,750. Then I want to allocate it to, let's say, the receipt that was done here was 900,000. So what I need to do is to click this and just move it like this. Boom. Then I just, whatever value you want to allocate, the amount you want to allocate to it. Let's assume it is just 10,000 that was actually paid from this money to this invoice. I'll enter 10,000, but the maximum is the number. You cannot go beyond the balance on that particular invoice. That's what it means. So let's assume I just click this now. So it means it has allocated. Look at what it has done. It has allocated this invoice to this receipt. So it also reflects here the same way to this. So you can still do the same thing. Let me now, okay, so now also what you can do is, if I decide that I don't want to allocate, rather than me allocating all, allocate all will unallocate everything, but I can pick the line item I want to unallocate and click on unallocate item. So it's only that line you have chosen that is going to be affected. So let's look at this now. The same thing, I picked from here and dropped here, right? Now, this time around, I want to pick from here and drop here. It's still the same thing. You see, it's still going to give us the same thing. Let's assume here now, I'm doing 10,000 example. Then I click on OK. So it means out of that invoice, it is only 10,000 naira that has been allocated, right? So which means there's still a balance of 38,750 on that particular document. Look at what happens here. Okay, look at this. You can see 10,000 has been removed from here. You can see. So unallocated amount is this. You can see. So it means that within these days, it means that out of 900,000, 10,000 has been allocated to a particular invoice. You understand? So that's what this means. So let me unallocate also here. Because the same thing here is going to reflect here also, I believe here. Let me see. Um, Unallocate item. This is, let me see this document. Okay, let's unallocate. Yeah, so you can see this. This was on 466 before, now it is 476 again. You can see. So this has been returned back to the way it was. So let's just pick, I'm going to allocate this. Let me allocate, okay, I'm going to allocate still on this, still this. Let me say 10,000. Okay. Then let's say there was another receipt. This particular receipt was still done on this. So the balance, okay. So look at what happened here. You can see that it is easy for me to pick different receipts onto a particular invoice. So I'm picking the value on that. So it doesn't mean I've exhausted it. So the balance still remains there. So it is not fully allocated. Yes. So now I can start, um, let's say, so let's say this. Uh, so, so, okay, so this now, let me say this. 210. Okay, so I still have an invoice there. Let's say, okay, so this invoice, I'm picking this invoice here. So 210. Okay, so 80,000. Let's stay balance of 80,000 here. So let's say there's 80,000 here, and I want to still make allocation, um, make an allocation on something else. So let's say this also. Okay, so okay, do you know what happened? If you know, I did this and I moved this like this. You understand? So you have to click where you want it to be. Then I move this now. I move it like this. So you have to tick, you have to click on the documents you want to add. The two documents must be clicked on before you can allocate. And I click here also. What else? What else? Let's just assume that those are just the only thing I want to allocate. I think there are some that are full, and is it, do I have anyone that is full? Let me try to, I want to try to exhaust this balance also. Let's say this and this also. I think this is fully allocated. Think so. Okay. That's also fully allocated. Okay, let's say this. Okay, okay. Let's just assume this. So I have 97,000 left here. Um, so this is the only outstanding invoice. And I don't want to exhaust all of them. Okay, let's just leave it like this. For instance, let's filter. Let's pick our filter because I've chosen all this. Let's tick. Let me say this is the credit allocation that has been made to our debit. So that's just the only one I want to see. Okay, so mm, let's- let me see this and see this. So these are the only documents that are fully allocated, fully debit allocated. So you can see these are fully debit allocated. So that's the function of this filter based on whatever you want to see. So let me just drop all of them. Let me drop all of them. Yes, so that's how to allocate within the system. So I told you if you want to unallocate an item, just click on it, then click on unallocate item. So see the see look at this also. So when I'm done, all I just need to do is to click on save. I click on save. So it's fully allocated. So close this. Now let's check our reports again. Let's go back to our report. So I click on reports, then um, customer statement first. That's the effect. No, I don't want to have. Let's so you can see your customer statement remains the same. Nothing is affected. So let's close this. Now let's close this also. Now let's go to our age analysis report. So we should see the effect now on our age analysis report. So I'm streamlining it to just that customer alone. So look at what has happened here. Look at what has happened there. You can see that those other ones that have been allocated is like has been removed. So it means that in real sense, this customer is not owing us again. But this is yet to be cleared. This is yet to be cleared, which means an invoice that has been raised but has not been matched to a credit or to your receipt. So now let's say I want to go back there and match them fully now. So then I go back here, I close this, then I go back to my customers, then I click on allocations, I go back to my allocations, look for my balances. So this is the balance. Then which of these receipt do I want to match it to? So let's assume it's actually for this. Oh, sorry. So this won't go. So except you click here because I want to match it to this. So I click this and take it here. So boom. Then I say okay. Yes, sir. So this is fully allocated. So this is fully allocated. Why this still has some payment that has not been matched to the invoice. So let's assume the customer paid in advance. So this means that this is actually awaiting a refund or awaiting another invoice to match it. So let's say close this now. Oh, sorry, we need to save it. Do you want to save it? Yes. So that's saved. If you don't save it, you lose your work. So let's go back here. Then move down. I need to move down to my customers and now age analysis. So I pick this, which is just that particular customer ID. So what do we have? You can see this has been cleared. You can see this is what is outstanding, which means the customer made this payment and this payment, the company is actually owing this customer this particular value or worth of goods. So I think that's that. So let's look at if there are other reports we can look at. Let's say um, customers allocation reports. So allocation reports. So you might want to know. Let me just see. So you might want to know based on the headings we saw or the filter we saw earlier. You want to know the debit, you want to see the ones that are fully allocated, those ones that are not fully allocated. So let's just click this and say reports. Understand? Now I click on this. So this shows a kind of previous allocation, the credits, and all that. So um, I can decide to, let's say, so that I can have a better view. Boom. So you can actually see documents that have been allocated to each other at this point and how it's being allocated. Then you might want to print it or see how it works. So thank you very much, and I hope you gain value from this. Thank you and bye.